Ask the Mayor. Your chance to ask the Mayor of Weymouth questions about the town and or anything else that you have concerns about. Ask the Mayor is pre-recorded. And now it's Mayor Bob Hedlund.
Well, what a surprising honor this is. Hi, I'm Dana Hersey with Ask the Manager. No, I'm actually Tim Kelly, the weatherman from down the street, with Ask the Mayor. How'd I get here?
It's a good question. How did you get in Weymouth, actually? Want to get into that?
It's an honor. What's your name? Where are you from?
So let me welcome our guest inquisitor, our citizen advocate, replacing Jim Melody, Mr. Tim Kelly. Are you the chief meteorologist? Is that your proper title?
You could call me the senior meteorologist. I'm the oldest, but I don't
Senior
get paid the most, and my
meteorologist
job duties are not that big.
For NECN. And I learned a lot from Tim, the difference between a weather person and a meteorologist a number of years ago. Is it interchangeable? Can we refer to you as the weatherman, or you have to stick with the
I don't mind
meteorologist?
being the weatherman.
Okay.
Meteorologist is a tough word.
And Tim has moved to Weymouth, saw the virtue in getting out of Scituate and coming to Weymouth. And how do you like it in Weymouth thus far?
It's more than just a shortcut on the way to Boston now.
But in
Actually,
all seriousness, you had a beautiful place in Scituate. How do
Yeah.
you like Weymouth? Since
I
you
like
moved to
it a lot because I work from home and my background is the Fore River, and it's just one constant mosaic of interest. This morning when I was doing the weather, the flag was straight out, and right next to the flag there was a hawk just sort of suspended in the wind, and that was about 20 feet behind my head. So the weather is changing every second. So as far as a meteorologist goes, to have the honor or pleasure to live where my childhood hero, Don Kent, and Roger Kent raised their families just makes the hair on my
So
neck
you're
stand
in
up.
Don Kent's old house.
Roger Kent's old house.
Roger Kent's old house. So when I was about 20 years old, I worked in a gas station on the other side of the Fore River Bridge. Mantia's Exxon, which is now a self-storage place. Quincy has those too. And Don Kent would come in. That was his regular stop for gas. It was pretty cool, waiting on him, because everybody knew Don Kent. I mean, from what age to what age? I mean, he was actually there when TV just basically started,
If you go to my
right?
YouTube site, I interviewed Bob Copeland about 12 years ago, and he told how he started with Don Kent, because Don Kent didn't have any replacements, didn't have an ability to take a day off, and Bob Copeland was up and coming. He was doing the weather for the Taunton newspaper, and Don was reading that and invited Bob in to come and fill in for him, and that was in the late 1950s.
Oh, wow.
So, and he was on television into the 80s, then he was on the radio all the way into the 90s, and I actually got to meet him, and now I'm good friends with his kids, Doug and Jeff.
So on a personal note, before we dive into the questions, which is the main reason that you are here, I got to know Tim and had the great honor of attending your wedding, but I was a guest of the bride's side of the family, correct? And what a great wedding it was on Nantucket. And I got to meet all these characters from television that I grew up watching.
The photo is Tom Ellis, R.D. Saul, Chet Curtis, Tim Kelly, Matt Noyes, Joe Joyce. There were a couple more, sorry.
Can I just tell one anecdote from the wedding?
Sure, I think.
Tom Ellis, many of you might remember. He was Channel 4 forever, New England Cable News and NECN. And he delivered it in Ted Knight.
Burgundy. Oh yeah, Ted Knight, right.
In a Ted Knight style from Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah, right.
And sitting there at the table with him, and he'd say, "Would you please pass the butter?" And I'm like, wow, he's either in character or that's the way he is. I think that's the way he was.
Really nice.
And the guy was a stud, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was in unbelievable shape.
When he wasn't on
handsome guy.
TV, he had on his Levi's and a red bandana, either out of his pocket or around his neck, and a cowboy hat. And he's from Texas, and he is a true gentleman cowboy. And he actually had birds and a farm there in Sandwich in his final years. Yeah, really nice guy.
Got to sit amongst the legends, and someday people will be sitting around saying, "I remember meeting Tim Kelly."
I remember meeting Senator Hedlund.
All right, are we ready? We're going to put your inquisition skills to the test.
All right, so we've got a lot of questions here. This one's kind of a follow-up regarding National Grid. Mr. Mayor, as I sit here in the dark, again, how are the power grids in Weymouth determined? Thicket Street and surrounding streets are on a grid with Abington and Brockton, and we lose power all the time. Our neighbors on Pond Street and Swan Street are not on this grid and never lose power when we do. How can we get on a Weymouth power grid? Thank you, Joe Lovely.
This question came in a while ago. I don't know if we referenced it on air and said we would follow up, or we just didn't get to it, because I know this was kicking around from the last taping. So we may have referenced it or not, but basically, you know, the power grids are determined by the power companies, you know, and there isn't really a Weymouth grid per se. Now, we do have examples like in Braintree, for instance, where they are their own municipal provider. Weymouth at one time actually did have its own power company.
Jackson Square.
And the generating plant was actually down where the Mass Electric or National Grid or Eversource or whatever it is now substation is, down at the Durante property on Commercial Street. So many towns, you know, in the early stages of electricity had their own municipal and gave them up for a host of reasons. But we have no control over how National Grid is setting up substations and grids and things like that. So that's kind of the short,
So it sounds like Joe's at sort of the end of the line where the rest of us with that power plant right there might be.
Well, it could be, and it could be a lot of different factors which cause outages. I mean, everything from a squirrel gnawing through a power line or you know, overloads or weather-related things and ice on lines. I'm very fortunate. You know, we were talking about this before we started taping, and some of the WETC staff that's here talks about the fact that they never lose their power. And I've been lucky in an area, I guess I'm in 02188 technically, but I'm kind of around Essex Street, that area. We never seem to lose our power over there, but I know that neighborhood has been a problem.
I feel pretty fortunate too, because working from home, it's you're really vulnerable, and you know, to be doing the weather, and all of a sudden I'm not all of a sudden I go dark. It's only happened about once. I've been here about 4 years, and I've only lost power for more than 5 minutes once. In all these storms.
You must get a lot of wind up there near the water.
We do. The worst of the winds seem to be the southerly winds lately. I don't know what causes that, but we're on the north side of a hill, so we
just for the record, I wanted to see if we could tape this over at NECN and have that thing in the background where I can point my hand, you know.
The green screen.
The green screen or whatever.
We have green screens that are portable now, so we can put one in next week.
We'll have to do another show and have you bring the green screen in.
Through the committee. Off-leash dog area. Are there any thoughts of new areas for dog owners to let their dogs run off-leash? There is plenty of land in North Weymouth, my backyard, that could easily be transformed into a nice, clean, safe area for dogs. Thanks, Rick.
All right, Rick, does Rick fails to mention the large area that he's referencing?
Yeah, I think he was talking about my yard. It's
so
actually not
the
that
issue
big.
of off-leash for dogs, you know, Weymouth has a leash law, as do most other communities. We actually have beefed up our natural resources department and actually have more staff that will be out there actually monitoring this kind of situation. We do receive lots of complaints. And you know, it's frustrating when you have people who follow the rules and then people come along and don't follow the rules, and it bothers the people that follow the rules, and it bothers the people that might be bothered by the people that aren't following the rules. So I don't know where in North Weymouth would be an appropriate place. We have Mary Heinrichs here, who's North Weymouth roots, and we have Tim Kelly, who now lives in North Weymouth. Can you suggest any North Weymouth areas?
Well, Great Hill is pretty big, and there are dogs off leash there occasionally, and I've heard that that's against the rules, so I'll try and remember not to do that anymore. But.
Well, I can, you know, Great Hill could be an area where we could discuss that, but I think, for instance, Great Esker Park, it's an area where we want to keep the leash law in place because it gets a lot of use from non-dog walkers. I would suggest, too, that you have just over the line from North Weymouth at Stotter's Neck, the DCR property, which is an off-leash area. And I know that gets so much use. Some people like to not be there because it's crowded and they look for more scenic or secluded areas. And Bear Cove Park's become popular, and that's been a huge battle in Hingham over whether or not the leash law should be in place.
Where's the huge battle?
Bear Cove Park in Hingham. And in fact, there was always a leash law, or they put a leash law in place, and dog owners were upset, and they went to town meeting with a special warrant article and overturned the rule that the town had put in place. And that was a back and forth battle, and they came up with this very convoluted compromise where it alternates on days or something, in different areas. You can't have the dog off leash where it's environmentally sensitive. And what we have found is on the on-leash days at Bear Cove Park, voila, Great Esker's getting a lot more use with people who aren't abiding by our leash law. So it's been difficult for our animal control people on those particular days. They notice that. But
Stotter's Neck is just a gem, really. I mean, often my feet come back soiled because not everyone follows those rules. And now with the snow melting, oh my goodness, it's terrible. But the geography.
People not picking up after their dog is what you're saying?
Yeah. How about the ones that put the stuff in the plastic bag and then leave the plastic bag? Either don't put it in a bag, make it last an extra month.
That bothers me when I'm in Wampatuck State Park and they leave the bags there, yeah.
Like, don't leave the bag. When DCR first pulled
I
the
can
trash
understand
cans,
someone not wanting to, if they're doing a 2-hour hike with their dog and not wanting to lug the bag back, but don't they make some kind of little container, you know?
Don't leave the bag.
Put it in or something that you can put the bags in,
Just
like a little
leave the-
fanny pack that's made out of hard plastic or something that seals up. I don't know.
The geography of that Stotter's Neck is something else, though, because you're surrounded by water, so all you really need is one fence there, and you know it's just over the line.
Okay, well, I hope that answers it. There has been periodically discussions about additional dog parks, and I know that they have one up at Union Point. It's not that big. I'm not a dog owner currently, but that doesn't exactly excite me, but that's one that comes to mind, aside from the Stotter's Neck thing.
So if, say, perhaps that someone did want to turn Great Hill into a unleashed area, what would be the procedure to make that happen?
Just we would start a discussion and involve our park and rec and our police department that has jurisdiction over the animal control officer and see what they think about that. If I were thinking about an idea, and I haven't given this any significant thought, but based on Rick's question, if I were thinking about an area in North Weymouth, I think there's room on the hill up at Great Hill where you could put. Someone's going to push back on me on this. This is a no-win thing, but
yeah.
I would rather see it up there, for instance, than like turning part of Great Esker into any kind of off-leash area. That, to me, would be an area where you might be able to do it.
Good.
And then you would be in compliance with the law.
Good, because I hate being a scofflaw every time I take my dog off the leash. Next question. Hello, Mayor. It's me again, Tracy. I worry about the increased litter in the environment. Likewise, Tracy. What we as a beautiful town along the water owe extra respect and care to the ocean with having litter control. That's right, because plastic goes downhill and it ends up in the water. At the beach, you need to get better covers for the barrels. Well, I think those are pretty good covers, actually. And collect.
Wait a minute, what was that commentary?
At the beach, you need to get better covers for the barrels.
What did you say?
Those barrel covers are pretty heavy and they're chained on.
Okay,
They're
all right.
pretty good,
Okay.
I think. And
As a citizen advocate, you're allowed editorial comment.
I go around, I actually pick up the litter around town quite a bit.
I know for a fact that he has cleaned up areas in North Weymouth.
The shelf,
Yep.
I mean, TVs. I found a whole axle of a car. Who does that? They love to drive into my neighborhood and drop these things
I just
off.
picked up a door someone dumped on
door.
Wharf Street.
That's another subject, big litter, but anyhow, we'll go
Actually,
back
you
to...
know what I did? You know what I did 2 nights ago? I returned shopping carts that were on the sidewalk on Middle Street to the Shaw's parking lot.
That is above
Does
and
that
beyond
go
the
into the
call
category
a
of
mayor.
beautification?
That goes in the category as a good mayor. And we know that you do a lot for the parks, that's for sure. The beaches in North Weymouth have more plastic than ever. I get out there every week, I'm trying. These plastics cause health problems to all living things in North Weymouth, and we have more plastic than ever, exclamation point. These plastics cause health problems to all living things, to make a point twice, in the environment. Please do more to pick up litter days. Do more pick up litter days and or Add more barrel lids that can handle the wind.
Got it.
Have the town pick it up sooner, especially before the wind. How are you going to know when it's going to be windy? Thanks,
Tuning into
TB.
Tuning into you. What's the questioner's name again?
TB, Tracy B.
So this was my chance to do a little editorial comment. I agree with her sentiments about the proliferation of litter. I told this anecdote on the show once before. Wasn't too long ago, I walked from Jackson Square down to East Street and down to Puritan Road. And just in that short distance, 52 nip bottles on the side of the road. And those things actually wash into the catch basins and wash out to the shoreline. And if you really want to see plastic litter, the worst example around would be go down along the banks of the Fore River, for instance, down by where the railroad crossing is, Lower Commercial Street. If you were to walk down along the embankment on the other side of the tracks down there, or if you went out where the Mass Electric property is out there, part of which Matt Talon and the Idlewell Improvement Association are talking about a Fore River trail down there. So it might be opened up at some point, or legitimized as an open space area. But the amount of plastic debris that washes up down there, I mean, it is just consistently across the whole shoreline. Something that would be more effective than the measures that she suggests would be a change in our state's littering law. And when I was in the legislature, it was brought to my attention, ironically, by a Weymouth police officer who feels the same way we feel about litter, and explained to me the cumbersome process that the police have to go through to cite someone for littering. Instead of issuing just a citation like you would for speeding, you have to issue a court summons to get someone in on a littering charge. It's ridiculous. And I tried to explain this when I was in the legislature, tried to get the law changed. Nobody really cared about what I was saying. I got no interest in that at all. But I'd love to see some initiative on Beacon Hill to make it easier for police to cite someone. So if they see you throw a beer can out your window, they got to issue a summons, bring you to court for a hearing.
It's really a community thing. Yeah, you should be able to find somebody, like a hefty fine for real.
Now
$200.
you travel, I assume, here and there, right? Do you tend to notice that in other geographic areas of the country there appears to be less litter than what we see in Massachusetts? Every time I go to Florida, I'm amazed, like off-ramps, for instance. Off-ramps, you don't see stuff thrown out everywhere.
Yeah, I went to Marco Island about 2 or 3 months ago, and that's one of the things that impressed me. The sidewalks go through people's yards on a bicycle or whatever, and I didn't see one, Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's.
It's noticeable, it really is.
So is it the people? Is it their cleanup crews? Is it the society that just doesn't litter?
I noticed on the east coast of Florida, where I visited a number of times, I did see convict crews out picking up stuff. But I think there's a cultural thing too. I really do. I don't know what it is. But anyway, we're running low on time. This is going very quickly with our anecdotes.
I've asked all mine. I only had 3. Should I go to this pile?
Yeah.
Are we out of time? Do we still?
I don't know. As the citizen advocate, you're supposed to be prepared to get through these questions. This looks like a long one.
Regarding the North Weymouth Library. Good afternoon.
Oh boy.
This question may have been asked before, and I missed it. But I work with senior citizens in Weymouth who are frequent library patrons. We all love OCLN and our library, staff and director. Weymouth is a geographically large town, and I realize staffing costs money. North Weymouth has the compressor, and the money is earmarked for the safety of North Weymouth. Driving over to the new Tufts Library is difficult. Heard that place is gorgeous. And the entrance and the corner into the parking lot is tight, extremely tight. The North Branch was very easy and safe parking. It's very accessible for all residents, especially driving senior citizens, with no stairs or elevator to access material. South Weymouth keeps the beautiful Fogg Library open, and North Weymouth gets no library branch and the compressor station. Why can't we use
We're always
mitigation
picking
money
on
from
North Weymouth.
from Enbridge? I know, it's a good target on that, guys. Why can't we use mitigation money from the Enbridge to help with keeping the North Branch open? Thank you, Kathleen Curran.
Excellent question. And if it's the same Kathleen Curran, I think it is. She'll understand budgeting very well because she's one of the more diligent people when it comes to parsing the school budget here in town. And you know, it's a finite pool of money that was provided under the host community agreement that's used primarily for capital projects, capital improvements. The staffing issue, which she points out in her letter, obviously we fund through our operating budget. So there's one distinction right there. There isn't money really going to the operating budget from the host community agreement funds from Enbridge. When we looked at the library project, it was determined by our library staff, by our library construction committee, and by the parameters by which we get the grant on the kind of size that we needed to serve this community. When we understood the size of the building and looked at the staffing needs, we knew that we could no longer be a community that's ranked third in the state in terms of the number of libraries per capita. We had more libraries per capita in this town than any community in the state except Springfield and Barnstable. Okay, so this was a given when we started on this process that we would be closing 2 branches. We still have 2 major branches now for a community of 56,000 people. And we know that North Weymouth can be, since it is an independent sovereign state, can be very provincial at times.
I resemble that remark.
But we felt that when we made this decision to go forward with the new library, it would be such an attraction, and the hours were already limited, and the staffing implications were such that we couldn't keep 2 other libraries open. For seniors, and Kathy's not, if it's the same Kathy, she's not a senior yet. She's young and spry, but for seniors, she's concerned about seniors. You know, we have transportation services that we provide the seniors through our Council on Aging. There's things that we could probably use there. I don't think the parking lot's too bad over there. Certainly it's not as in proximity to the parking lot in North Weymouth. But we have been asked this question before. That's kind of the same answer. We're sympathetic, but there's no way that we're going to be able to maintain 4 libraries in this community. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, really. I grew up with one tiny little library in my town, but all the schools had libraries. But we're probably not invited into the school libraries.
Hey, you know, per capita, we still have more libraries than Hingham, right? More than Quincy.
But they have such a nice dog park.
Who does?
Hingham.
You know who has the
DCR,
greatest?
actually.
You know who has the greatest dog park probably in the entire universe right now?
I don't.
Quincy just opened one up on Quarry Street that is like the Ritz-Carlton of dog parks. It is insane.
Oh, great.
Go check that out. And
Sure.
Rick from North Weymouth, check that one out.
Yeah, right.
You'll never want to go to any other dog park when you see this thing.
Are you going to keep going on these questions?
Let's go.
It's time. Question from Ed Hartnett. WETC and the vacant Pratt Library. Here we go. Hello, Mayor Bob and Tim. A well-respected man. Melody.
Kinks, right? The Kinks. Ed likes to make musical references.
All right.
And he hasn't stumped me once.
That's
and
funny.
you know I haven't seen this. Right?
I think I've seen Bob at more concerts than anything.
Last show he cited Barry McGuire, Eve of Destruction.
A well-respected man. I just viewed your latest show on WETC, and you mentioned that the Pratt Library is no longer operating at the site. Then it occurred to me that WETC operates out of the basement of the Pratt Library. No, we're on the 2nd floor of the town hall. Can come out of the basement. Is there any chance that WETC can come out of the basement and occupy the main floor and operate from there under the direction of the esteemed Mary Heinrichs?
Can we get a shot? Quick.
WETC is an important resource in this town and covers so many important issues, meetings, and so forth. I believe we should upgrade to a more inviting space in the building so we don't do all the programming here. What would it take for the town to move them? Better yet, can you tell me if there's a chance that could happen? With negotiations between you, the town, and the cable company, Comcast, ? I think it is time for the dialogue to start. Don't you? Ed Hartsnet.
Did you forge Ed Hartnett's email address and submit that question, Mary? So there's a lot of moving pieces to this. This is an awesome question by Ed Hartnett, as usual, and he is our most prolific questioner. A lot of moving pieces to this. Yes, the library's closing. Yes, WETC's in the basement. Yes, WETC spends money leasing elsewhere. Consolidation might be a great idea, Ed. And then the other moving piece to this is in the news this week, we are looking at putting our own fiber in place and potentially bringing in competition to Comcast, which could potentially impact WETC's ability to provide the service that they provide us like they're doing now. And I would hate to see Mary Heinrichs walking down the street talking to her lunch pail on her way to the unemployment office if something like that were to occur. So as we enter into these negotiations and move forward with this effort to bring municipal fiber in, we want to be sure that this important, and when I say it's important, I mean it is extremely important with the death of newspapers, bringing coverage of all the things that WETC covers, all these meetings and I want to give a shout out to our administration. When I came in here, they were only covering what? Town council, school committee, and licensing. And we have expanded that because we are the most transparent administration in Weymouth town history. We've expanded that to Conservation Commission meetings, Planning Board meetings, Board of Zoning Appeals meetings, School Building Committee meeting, Library Construction Committee meeting, just about everything that happens. WETC is out there. Part of that was, I've cracked the whip. Part of it is they're eager and aggressive in doing this. Part of it is they have taken the initiative and wired meeting rooms to make it easier to cover those buildings. We don't want to lose that, Ed. So that is something, as we go down this road, is a huge consideration. Don't want to see Mary walking down the street talking to her lunch pail.
As a transparent administration, and I've been involved with a few meetings, I'm going to ask a question of my own.
You have that leeway.
What is the status of the reconstruction of perhaps a walkway between George Lane Beach and the old beach, they call it, Wessagusset Beach?
If you had tuned into the last episode of Ask the Mayor, that question was actually asked by someone and you would have had your answer. So we're going to be brief on that answer, but we got the grant. We've spent no existing town funds on this project thus far, you should know too, because we saw this as kind of a luxury. Again, coming in, I realized this was the only town I used to represent of the 8 in the legislature that never went after a Seaport Advisory Council grant. We sought one, we consulted with the Waterfront Committee, which you would be great to serve on, by the way. And we consulted with them and said, what is your priority project to go to Seaport Economic in seeking a grant? They said, well, this has been on the drawing board for 30-something years. This is our priority. They took a vote and they wanted us to advance the Beach Connection project. We got the grant to do the design work and the environmental permitting, which has now been completed. So we have a project ready to go, and as you know on these things, the permitting usually takes longer than the actual construction. So now with those documents, we are poised, and Christine Howe is raring to go, and the next grant round that opens, I think is this year, that we would submit an application for construction funding to advance that.
So there'll probably be some more meetings with the neighbors.
Well, for you get to see the actual final design, I think if they haven't already, you'd be doing that. And I know that actually that's another series of meetings.
As far as
WETC
existing
covered.
stairways from some of the residents down to the
Well,
beach.
we've actually got that issue kind of worked out, and it seems like one of the most vociferous critics of the concept at the last meeting actually hugged our planning department director.
I'll check that out.
It's like peace in the Middle East.
That's interesting. All right, well, we're down that.
And by the way, we not to get too deep in this, but we can do a development update on it maybe sometime. But you know, there was also areas where we had encroachment on town property. And this just because of the history of the site, there's a bomb shelter up there carved into the hill. I mean, crazy stuff. And it seems that our legal department and planning have got, the last I was told, things worked out.
Smoothed out. I love that. What about the trees blocking the view at the shelf? Can I just go over there and cut them down? Do you mind?
What's the signal, Mayor? We're out of time. So as far as the trees on the shelf go,
I have a machete. John, get the machete.
all right, we traditionally end it with a recommendation to stay tuned for an old show on WSBK TV, which I'm sure they used to beam out to Nantucket where you once lived. What would you suggest we stay tuned for?
Bruins game.
Poor rendition of Nut Rocker Suite.
I can't remember all the shows in SBK. That's where I used to watch the Bruins, though, and Dana Hersey.
Well, to be honest with you, the Bruins were often the lead-in to the old Ask the Manager show. Exactly, that's a good one.
Right.
See you next time.
So, yeah, thanks for having me.
If you have a question, please email the mayor at askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's askmayorbob@gmail.com. Maybe your question will be answered on the next episode of Ask the Mayor.